much, much longer than season 3. When I got to the end, I was like, wait a minute, I'm not done listening yet. So it was just, I was like waiting for a conclusion, and this is a missing persons case, so there isn't one, and I know that drives some people crazy, and there are cases where I am also driven absolutely bonkers by the fact that there's just no more information. But I feel like this case really needs to be talked about, and I'm going to give you a rundown. It is a shorter case because I didn't know how long I could whisper, and if you really want it fleshed out, I really do recommend going and listening to the Up and Vanished podcast. There's interviews with a lot of people I'm going to talk about, and I think that you guys will really like it. Anyway, if you had not noticed by the title, we are going to talk about Ashley Loring, Heavyrunner, today. She was 20 years old when she was last seen in June of 2017. Ashley is only 5 foot 2 inches tall. A childhood friend described her as emotionally, spiritually, and physically strong for being so small. Loxie Loring, Ashley's mother, described her daughter as smart, athletic, positive, always willing to help people, someone who loved horses and the rain. Ashley is a member of the Blackfeet Indian Reservation in Montana, and she was enrolled in Blackfeet Community College studying environmental science when she went missing. The Blackfeet Reservation is expansive, and it spans more than 1.5 million acres. Now, just to give you an estimate on the size of that, that is larger than the entire state of Delaware. Now, everything kind of started with Ashley's sister Kimberly really kind of knowing something was just not right. She was on a trip to she was okay, and Ashley said yes, she was fine. So Kimberly goes to the Blackfeet law enforcement, and they launch a 3-day search. After the search was concluded, however, they just kind of stopped doing anything. They proved to be less than helpful as time went on, and it would in fact take the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or the BIA, almost 2 months before they would get seriously involved in the case of Ashley. Her uncle said that law enforcement did not handle Ashley's case the way that they should have. They should have taken it seriously from the get-go. They just kind of blew it off as she was of age and she was just out there doing whatever she wants. I absolutely cannot stand it when that is the case with law enforcement, because just because she's 20 doesn't mean she's just going to drop off the face of the earth and not talk to anyone. Rant over. So 2 weeks after Ashley was last seen, the family receives their first tip. I don't really know how valid this tip is, but someone had seen a young woman running from a vehicle on US Highway 89 on the reservation. This area is known to be really desolate, and it is surrounded by swamps and pretty dense forest. They did manage to have a search conducted of this area, and in a nearby dump, volunteers found a gray sweater that was thought to have belonged to Ashley, which they then did what they should have done, and they handed it over to the BIA for testing. Kimberly at this point is really frustrated. She's feeling like her sister's case is not being taken seriously, and she just kind of feels like officials are pretty much indifferent to the case. Kimberly really takes matters into her own hands. She conducted daily searches on the reservation and really became her own detective for this case. She was taking phone calls, receiving messages, and following up on any lead she could get. She soon discovered, and I'm not sure how she discovered, that the gray sweater that they had found during that prior search had never been sent to the crime lab, and that it was sitting in a box in evidence with the BIA for months. Kimberly said she felt like if she and her family did not search for Ashley, then no one would be looking for her. During one of the family's many searches, weeks after Ashley was declared missing, the family also found another sweater and a pair of red-stained boots. This sweater was torn, and it had red stains on it that appeared to be blood. The items were found on the northern edge of the reservation, and not too far from a house owned by a 52-year-old man named Sam McDonald. Prior to Ashley's disappearance, Kimberly knew that Ashley had been struggling. She was struggling with the death of their grandfather and the breakup of her first love shortly after that, so she was in a rough place in life. And Ashley started experimenting with drugs and with hanging out with a completely different crowd, an older crowd. This crowd included 52-year-old Sam McDonald. Sam McDonald was one of the last people that Ashley Loring was with before her disappearance. He admitted he had been partying with her for a few days, and he claimed that the last time he saw Ashley was the morning as Paul Valenzuela. He is another man in his 50s with a known criminal record. Paul and his then wife at the time, Denisha Running Crane, or T as she goes by, were also investigated by the police. They had their houses searched, their cars, everything. Paul and T were in a pretty rocky marriage, and Ashley's family have said that Ashley and Paul were seeing each other before she disappeared. A month after Ashley disappeared, Paul files for divorce from T, who has said that she did not know about their relationship until after Ashley disappeared. Now, to date, police have not named anyone as a suspect in Ashley Loring Heavyrunner's disappearance, and no arrests have been made, just so you know. Kimberly Loring ended up testifying to Senate members about her experience, her struggles, and the mismanagement of evidence that she witnessed from law enforcement in her sister's case. She said, "From the very beginning, both Blackfeet tribal law enforcement and the BIA have ignored the dire situation that Ashley is in. They have allowed the investigation to be handled in a dysfunctional manner. This isn't just a reality for our family, but a reality for many murdered and missing Indigenous women's families." Since Ashley's disappearance, Kimberly has quit her job, moved back home, and continued the search for her sister. She has conducted more than 120 searches with little help from authorities. Kimberly continues to search for her sister, and this case is still open and unsolved. So that's a brief description of Ashley Loring's case. There's much more covered in the podcast. Like I said, there are interviews. He interviews Sam, the guy that she was hanging out with. He interviews Kimberly. He talks to T. He tries to talk to Paul, but he doesn't really get much. There's so much crazy stuff in this case. I'm going to try to give you what I can. So, as Kimberly is investigating this case, she hears from people that it was T, that T did something to Ashley because she was dating Paul, and T was really upset with this. And when Payne starts the podcast, T is really like, "I don't want nothing to do with this. I didn't do it. I have, I'm not this from family members and from people that knew these people, rather than someone just like me just giving you the facts and the details. If you're not a podcast type of person, I totally get it. That's why I covered it here on my channel. I just can't believe that there are so many missing and murdered Indigenous women, not just in our country, but all over the world. And I understand why they feel as though people are ignoring them. I try to cover cases like this on my channel because even though I am just a small channel, I feel like I'm getting the word out to the 5,000 people that watch my videos. Maybe you never heard of her before. Maybe you saw her face but you didn't know it. And I can bring some awareness to some of these cases. Anyway, if you are still listening, please leave me a comment down below, even if it is just an emoji. I have noticed that I'm not getting this sort of traction that I used to be getting. My number of subscribers is not going up like it used to, and things like that. That could potentially be just because I haven't been posting as much content lately. But your liking and commenting on my videos really does help with this crazy YouTube algorithm. Anyway, I know this is a shorter video, and I apologize for that. As you can hear, I am quite raspy, and really, I don't know if some people will not like that or not. So, I am going to end this video here by saying once again, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for subscribing to my channel if you're subscribed, and I will see you next week for another true crime video. Hopefully, when my voice is